Hi guys, it's me again, and I wanted to just show you a little bit about the technique called Drybrush Scumbling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit. It's kind of hard to see in my example, so I want to show you. So this is an example made by a student, and the way that dry brushing works is it sits on top of color that's already there, and it just subtly changes it. So for instance, if you look at this tree edge here, the reason that this tree edge gets lighter on this is because the artist has taken some white or light paint and just very gently dry brushed it across the dark of the tree. The same thing is also true in here in the stalk, the stalk of the mushroom. They've done the opposite, which is that they've taken dark paint and dry brushed it across the light. And the key to dry brushing is this idea that you're going to take, honestly, the best brush for dry brushing is your worst brush. So if you have a brush that's kind of all scraggly like that, that is totally your best brush for dry brushing. And the idea is that you put paint, so your brush is dry. Yes, dry your brush off if you rinsed it recently. Your brush is dry, and you put paint on your brush, and then you just kind of you wipe it off a little bit on a rag. Sorry, so I'm going to put not a lot of paint on. Well, that was a little bit more than I meant to. And then I'm going to actually wipe it off on this rag, and then I'm going to test it before I go to my actual painting. I always like to test it because it's very easy. I'll show you what happens if I don't test it. It's very easy for me to end up with a glob like that, right? Can you see that? So what I want to do is I want to put the paint on, sort of blot it off, and then go ahead. And what that means is that this is kind of a slow accumulation. So I thought I would just take this painting of some eggs that, again, somebody has left here, and therefore it's mine to do whatever I like. And I thought I would just take some of this dry brush, and I have a scrap paper here that I keep testing my brush with, and I'm just going to come from this bottom edge here and just kind of start to try and add a sense of shadow in here, and just ever so slightly draw that across the egg. And the whole idea is that I'm putting color down, but I am letting the color underneath be visible. And so what happens is you're seeing two colors at once. I'm going to go ahead and do it again. Dab, 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 test. And then I'm going to come in here. This is a little harder for me to do with the egg in the back. I'm going to try and create a little bit of a sense of shadow happening here. And it can be quite subtle, okay? So it can be quite subtle what's happening. Let me go in and just for fun, get a little bit of, again, dab it off, get a little bit of purple going on this other one, not for any particular reason other than just for you to see how different it is with a different color. So you can really see how this can actually sort of very quietly. Now I've got a bit of a overlap there that's more than what I would like. That happens. You can see that I've got a little bit of a blob there. So my choice is kind of to either go back in with some white, which I could do, or lighten up. I'm going to dab, 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 and try and just break that up a little bit so it's not quite as noticeable. I would probably go back in there with a little more white and do it again. So what happens is this is pretty darn subtle in terms of what's going on. But you can really change a painting quite a bit just by this very quiet dry brushing. I want to show you the second piece of dry brushing, which is scumbling. And let's see. So some of my paintbrushes are wet here, so I don't really want to use them. Let's see if I can find a paintbrush which is dry. Apparently I washed all my paintbrushes. They're all a little wet. But what I want to do here is I want to bring in some a different color into the background. And I got to test this out. Okay, and then, so this scumbling is like dry brushing, but you start to actually do a circular pattern. And so what happens is, sorry, I'm trying to find this where you're going to see it. What happens is you start to come in, oh, I've still got a little bit of, no, that brush is still wet. So if your brush is wet, what happens is you just don't get the separation that you want. And you really do want separation. So there we go. So that's better. So what's happening here is, can you see that little bit there? I'm doing this and I'm putting this brush on again, dab, dab, dab. And what I want to do is I put this color on, and I'm putting this color on in circles. And the thing about, doesn't have to be a full circle, it could be a partial circle, but what you'll notice is that all of a sudden, this texture is really remarkably soft compared to even just the dry brush. So if you have something that you really want to have be soft, doing dry brush with this scumbling method is really effective because it actually creates a sense of softness. So you can start to see that that's actually, you know, the circular motion actually sort of feels like a softness, whereas the more straight, just dry brush motion just feels like a color on top of a color. One last thing I'm just going to show you, just so that you can see, is I can use my board here. Sorry. If I do a little bit of red scumbling on top of this background here. So let's just say that I start doing a little bit of this on top of this background here. It's hard to do this upside down and backwards, but you guys will get the drift. And I've got just enough paint on my brush that I'm kind of scrubbing it just a little bit. And I want to be kind of really kind of slow about building this up. So it's one of those techniques which rewards patience. Okay, I'm not doing a great job here. This would be a lot easier if I was facing it. My dry brush is a little erratic here. Yeah, that's a little erratic, but what you can see is how different that texture and that feel is of the lower half of that background compared to the upper half of that background. So I've totally changed the effect of what I'm looking at here. You know, I haven't done anything on the hair, but the hair is a perfect place where you could do something that is sort of soft. Let's see, I want to see, I'm not sure if this is going to be as visible enough for you guys, but even though her hair is dark, if I was to take this dry brush and with this blue kind of softly layered over top and scumble it, it would actually sort of soften up this hair here quite a bit. Now the trick is, you've got to be able to do this in certain areas and not in others. So there's a little bit of you know, a learning curve and practice curve here. So you can see now that instead of having this kind of stripy hair that she has on one side, she now has stripes but with a softness that she didn't have before. So it's a way of letting color be layered on top of it. You're not really covering up what's below. You're just kind of changing how we actually, how we sort of feel it and witness it. It's a little bit different than glazing, although it does some of the same thing. But because of the way that you're creating sort of this scratchy surface over top, it creates a sense of texture. So that's the best I got for you right now. So give it a shot. The trick is that the underneath color, whatever your underneath color is, you want it to be dry. And then even if you're just starting, what you might start is you might start by thinking about using dry brush either to make something dark or to make something lighter, to make a shadow or to make a light. Okay, that's it. Thanks.